The morning sun filtered through the heavy curtains of the hospital room, casting long shadows across the sterile white walls. William sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair beside Kate's bed, his hands trembling slightly as he watched her sleep. The machines around them beeped rhythmically, a constant reminder of how fragile life could be. It had been 3 days since the accident, and Kate hadn't opened her eyes once. William's mind kept replaying the events that led them here. They had been driving home from their anniversary dinner, laughing about the waiter who had accidentally spilled wine on William's shirt. Kate had been telling him about her plans for the garden, how she wanted to plant roses near the back fence where their future children could play. Her eyes had sparkled with hope and dreams that now seemed impossibly distant. The sound of rain against the window matched William's somber mood. He reached out and gently touched Kate's hand, feeling the coolness of her skin beneath his fingers. The wedding ring on her finger caught the light, reminding him of the vows they had made just 2 years ago. In sickness and in health, he whispered to himself, never imagining those words would be tested so soon. Dr. Morrison entered the room quietly, his expression serious but kind. William had grown to recognize that look over the past few days. It was the face of someone who delivered difficult news for a living. "How is she today?" William asked, though he could see for himself that nothing had changed. "Her vital signs are stable," Dr. Morrison replied, checking the charts at the foot of the bed. "The swelling in her brain has gone down slightly, which is encouraging. But, William, we need to talk about what comes next." William's heart sank. He had been dreading this conversation, knowing it was coming, but hoping somehow it could be avoided. "What do you mean?" Dr. Morrison pulled up another chair and sat down, his voice gentle but direct. "Kate's injuries were severe. While her body is healing, we still don't know the extent of the neurological damage. Even when she wakes up, and I believe she will, she may not be the same person you remember. There could be memory loss, personality changes, or physical limitations we can't predict yet." The words hit William like physical blows. He had been holding on to the hope that Kate would simply wake up and everything would return to normal. They would go home, tend to her garden, and continue building the life they had planned together. The possibility that she might not remember him, might not remember their love, was almost too painful to consider. "How long?" William asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's no way to know. Some patients wake up within days, others take weeks or months. And some," Dr. Morrison paused, choosing his words carefully, "some never fully return to who they were before." William nodded, trying to process this information while maintaining his composure. He had been strong for Kate, for her family, for everyone who called asking about her condition. But sitting in that hospital room, facing the possibility of losing the woman he loved even if her body survived, he felt his strength crumbling. After Dr. Morrison left, William found himself alone with his thoughts and fears. He remembered the day they first met at the bookstore where Kate worked. She had been arranging the display of romance novels, muttering under her breath about unrealistic expectations and perfect endings. When she noticed him watching, she had blushed and explained that she preferred mysteries because real life was complicated enough without adding impossible fairy tales to the mix. They had talked for hours that day, discovering shared interests and differences that complemented each other perfectly. Kate was practical where William was a dreamer, cautious where he was impulsive. She grounded him while he encouraged her to take risks. Together, they had created a balance that made them both better people. Now, as William sat beside her unconscious form, he wondered if that balance would ever exist again. Would Kate remember their first kiss under the old oak tree in the park? Would she remember the way they used to dance in the kitchen while making dinner? Or how she would steal his coffee every morning because hers was never quite right? The afternoon brought visitors, Kate's sister Sarah, her parents, and several friends from work. Each person who entered the room looked at Kate with such sadness that William found it increasingly difficult to maintain hope. They spoke in hushed tones, sharing memories and offering support, but William could see the doubt in their eyes. They were already beginning to grieve for the Kate they knew, preparing themselves for the possibility that she might never return. Sarah stayed after the others left, sitting on the opposite side of Kate's bed. "She looks peaceful," she said, brushing a strand of hair from Kate's forehead. "Remember when we were kids, and she would pretend to be sleeping so she wouldn't have to do chores? Mom could never tell the difference, but I always knew because Kate's eyes would flutter when she was faking it." William smiled despite his sadness. "She still does that when she doesn't want to get up for work on Monday mornings. I never told her I could tell." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in their own memories of Kate. As evening approached, Sarah prepared to leave. "You should go home and rest," she told William. "Take a shower, eat a real meal. Kate would be upset if she knew you were neglecting yourself like this." But William couldn't bring himself to leave. What if Kate woke up while he was gone? What if she needed him and he wasn't there? The thought of her opening her eyes to an empty room was unbearable. "I'll stay a little longer," he said, settling back into the chair that had become his second home. As night fell, the hospital grew quieter. The nurses made their rounds less frequently, and the hallway lights were dimmed. William found himself talking to Kate, telling her about his day, about the weather, about anything that came to mind. The doctors had said that sometimes unconscious patients could hear and understand, even if they couldn't respond. "I've been thinking about our honeymoon," he said softly, holding her hand. "Remember how nervous you were about flying? You gripped my hand so tightly during takeoff that I thought you might break my fingers. But once we got to Scotland, you said it was worth facing your fear because the countryside was the most beautiful thing you'd ever seen." He paused, studying her face for any sign of response. But Kate remained still and silent. "The doctor says you might not remember things when you wake up. He says you might be different. But I want you to know that it doesn't matter to me. Whatever happens, wherever this journey takes us, I'm not going anywhere. I meant those vows, Kate. All of them." As the clock neared midnight, William finally allowed exhaustion to overtake him. He laid his head on the bed beside Kate's arm and closed his eyes, his hands still clasped around hers. In his dreams, they were back in their garden, Kate laughing as she tried to teach him the difference between weeds and wildflowers. But even in sleep, he couldn't escape the fear that those memories might be all he had left of the woman he loved. 2 weeks had passed since William first heard Dr. Morrison's sobering words about Kate's condition. The hospital room had become his world, filled with the familiar sounds of monitoring equipment and the subtle changes in Kate's breathing that he had learned to interpret like a private language. He had memorized every detail of her face, from the small scar above her left eyebrow from a childhood accident to the way her lips curved slightly upward even in unconsciousness. William had established a routine that kept him anchored in hope. Each morning, he would arrive with fresh flowers, always sunflowers, Kate's favorites, and arrange them where she could see them when she opened her eyes. He would read to her from a mystery novel she loved, his voice filling the quiet room with stories of clever detectives and impossible crimes. Sometimes he would catch himself waiting for her to interrupt with theories about the culprit, the way she always did when they read together at home. On this particular morning, something felt different. William couldn't explain what it was, but there was an energy in the room that hadn't been there before. As he settled into his usual chair with Kate's favorite book, he noticed her fingers seemed to twitch slightly. He watched intently, wondering if he was imagining things after so many days of hoping for any sign of improvement. "Kate," he whispered, leaning closer to the bed. "Can you hear me?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, Kate's eyelids fluttered. William's heart began racing as he called for the nurse, his voice filled with excitement and terror in equal measure. This was the moment he had been praying for, but it was also the moment when he would learn whether his Kate was truly coming back to him. Nurse Patricia, who had become like a guardian angel over the past 2 weeks, rushed into the room, followed quickly by Dr. Morrison. They began checking Kate's vital signs and responses while William stood back, his hands shaking as he watched his wife slowly emerge from the darkness that had claimed her. Kate's eyes opened gradually, squinting against the light. She looked confused and disoriented, her gaze moving around the room without recognition. When her eyes finally landed on William, he held his breath, searching her face for any spark of familiarity. "Where am I?" Kate's voice was hoarse and weak, but it was the most beautiful sound William had heard in weeks. "You're in the hospital, sweetheart," Dr. Morrison explained gently. "You were in an accident. Do you remember anything about what happened?" Kate frowned, her brow creasing with concentration. "I remember driving. It was raining, but everything else is foggy." Her eyes moved to William again, and his heart sank when he saw no recognition there. She was looking at him the way she might look at any stranger. "This is William," Dr. Morrison said, gesturing toward him. "He's your husband. He's been here with you every day since the accident." Kate studied William's face with polite interest, as if she were meeting someone new. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I don't remember you. Should I?" The words cut through William like a knife, but he forced himself to smile. "Don't worry about that now," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "The important thing is that you're awake. Everything else will come back in time." But even as he spoke those reassuring words, William wasn't sure he believed them. The way Kate looked at him was so distant, so polite. This was the woman who used to know his thoughts before he spoke them, who could read his mood from across a room. Now she was treating him like a pleasant acquaintance. Over the following days, William watched as Kate slowly regained her physical strength. She remembered basic things: how to read, how to walk, how to brush her teeth. But the personal memories, the shared experiences that had formed the foundation of their relationship, remained locked away. She was polite to William, grateful for his presence, but there was no warmth, no connection, no love in her eyes when she looked at him. Kate's family struggled with the situation as much as William did. Her sister Sarah would sit with her for hours, showing photographs and telling stories from their childhood, hoping to spark some recognition. Kate would listen attentively and ask appropriate questions, but it was clear that she was learning about her life rather than remembering it. "It's like she's become a different person," Sarah confided to William one evening as they stood in the hospital hallway. "She looks like Kate, she sounds like Kate, but the Kate I knew is gone." William understood what Sarah meant, but he couldn't accept it. Somewhere inside this polite, distant woman was his wife. The woman who cried at sad movies, who sang off-key in the shower, who left little love notes in his lunchbox. He had to believe that Kate was still there, buried beneath the confusion and memory loss. Dr. Morrison arranged for Kate to work with a therapist who specialized in traumatic brain injury. The sessions focused on cognitive exercises and memory techniques, but progress was slow. Kate approached the therapy with the same polite determination she showed toward everything else, but William could see her frustration growing as the memories failed to return. One afternoon, William found Kate sitting by the window in her room, staring out at the garden below. She had been cleared to leave the hospital soon, but the question of where she would go remained complicated. Their house, filled with shared memories and personal belongings, meant nothing to her now. She had asked if she could stay with her parents until she figured things out, a request that had broken William's heart even though he understood her reasoning. "May I sit with you?" William asked, approaching her chair carefully. Kate nodded and smiled, that same polite smile she gave everyone. "Of course. It's your room too, isn't it? I mean, you've been living here as much as I have." William sat in the visitor's chair he had occupied for so many sleepless nights. "Kate, I want you to know that I don't expect anything from you. I know this is confusing and frightening, and I know you don't remember our life together. But I want you to know that whatever you need, however long it takes, I'll be here." Kate turned to look at him, her expression thoughtful. "Can you tell me about us? About how we met, what we were like together? Everyone keeps showing me pictures and telling me stories, but I want to hear it from you." For the next hour, William shared their story. He told her about the bookstore, about their first date at the little Italian restaurant where the waiter spoke no English and they had to point at menu items randomly. He described their wedding day, how nervous they had both been, how Kate had laughed so hard during the ceremony that she couldn't stop crying. He talked about their dreams for the future, the children they hoped to have, the house they had bought with its imperfect but lovable quirks. Kate listened intently, occasionally asking questions or making observations. "You must love her very much," she said when William finished. The use of third person struck William oddly. "I love you," he corrected gently. "But I'm not her anymore, am I?" Kate asked with surprising clarity. "I'm someone who looks like her and has her body, but I'm not the woman you fell in love with. I can see it in your eyes when you look at me. You're looking for her, but she's not here." William felt tears threatening, but fought them back. Kate's insight was both heartbreaking and remarkably perceptive. "You're still you," he insisted. "Your memories might be gone, but your heart, your soul, your essence, that's all still there." Kate reached out and touched his hand, the first time she had initiated physical contact since waking up. "I can see that you're a good man, William, and I can see that you loved her deeply. But I think we both need to accept that I might never remember our life together. I might never love you the way she did." The honesty in her words was both brutal and oddly comforting. At least she wasn't pretending, wasn't offering false hope or empty reassurances. This new Kate, whoever she was, possessed a directness that the old Kate had sometimes lacked. "I know," William admitted, "but I'm not ready to give up yet. Are you willing to try? Not to remember necessarily, but to see if we can build something new together?" Kate considered this for a long moment. "I don't want to hurt you more than I already have, and I don't want to pretend to be someone I'm not. But if you're willing to get to know the person I am now, instead of trying to resurrect the person I was then, maybe we can try." That evening, as William prepared to leave the hospital for the first time in weeks, he felt a strange mixture of hope and grief. The Kate he had married might truly be gone, but perhaps there was a chance to love this new version of her. It wouldn't be the same, and it might not work, but for the first time since the accident, he felt like they were both being honest about their situation. As he walked to his car, William made a decision. Tomorrow, he would bring Kate home, not to try to recreate their old life, but to begin exploring what their new life might look like. It was terrifying and uncertain, but it was also a beginning. And sometimes he thought beginnings were exactly what broken hearts needed most. The ride home from the hospital was filled with an awkward silence that neither William nor Kate seemed able to break. William gripped the steering wheel tightly, hyper-aware of every turn and traffic light, the memory of their accident making him cautious in ways he had never been before. Beside him, Kate stared out the passenger window, watching the familiar neighborhood streets pass by like scenes from someone else's life. When they pulled into their driveway, Kate studied the house with the detached interest of a potential buyer. The yellow Victorian cottage with its wraparound porch and climbing roses had once been their dream home. They had spent months renovating it together, arguing good-naturedly about paint colors and furniture placement. Now Kate looked at it as if seeing it for the first time, which in many ways she was. "It's lovely," she said politely as William carried her hospital bag to the front door. "Very charming." William's heart ached at her formal tone, but he forced himself to remember their conversation from the hospital. She was trying to be honest, trying to navigate this impossible situation with as much grace as she could manage. He needed to meet her effort with understanding rather than disappointment. The front door stuck slightly. It always had, especially in humid weather, and William had to put his shoulder into it. Kate watched him wrestle with the door, and for just a moment, something flickered across her face. Not recognition exactly, but perhaps familiarity with the gesture, as if her body remembered what her mind had forgotten. Inside, the house felt both achingly familiar and strangely foreign. William saw it through Kate's eyes now. The mismatched furniture they had collected over time, the photographs covering every available surface, the half-finished puzzle on a coffee table that they had been working on together the night of the accident. To her, these weren't cherished memories, but the belongings of strangers. "I'll put your things in the guest room," William offered, wanting to give her space to explore without pressure. Kate nodded gratefully. "Thank you. That's probably best for now." She moved slowly through the living room, her fingertips trailing over surfaces as if she were reading Braille. "You said I liked the garden?" "You loved it," William replied, watching her examine a small succulent on the windowsill. "That's your favorite. You called it your starter plant because it was the first thing you managed not to kill." A small smile crossed Kate's lips, the first genuine expression of amusement he had seen from her. "I can see why. It looks pretty hardy." She moved to the back door and peered through the glass at the garden beyond. "May I go outside?" The garden was Kate's masterpiece, carefully planned and lovingly maintained. She had spent hours out there, hands deep in soil, planning seasonal rotations and companion plantings with the dedication of an artist. Now William watched her walk through it like a stranger, pausing at plants and flowers with polite curiosity rather than the deep affection he remembered. But something was happening. He could see it in the way she knelt beside the herb garden, in how she unconsciously deadheaded a few wilted flowers, in the way she bent to smell the lavender despite claiming no memory of planting it. Her body seemed to remember what her mind could not. "This is basil," she said suddenly, pinching a leaf and bringing it to her nose. "And this is rosemary." "I know that." She looked up at William with surprise. "I know what these plants are. Not just their names, but how they smell, how to care for them." William felt a flutter of hope. "Your muscle memory is intact. Dr. Morrison said that might happen, your body remembering things, even when your conscious mind doesn't." Kate spent the rest of the afternoon in the garden while William unpacked her things and tried to make the house feel less overwhelming for her. He removed most of their wedding photos, storing them carefully in a box, and cleared out space in the bathroom for her toiletries. He wanted her to feel comfortable, not constantly confronted with evidence of a life she couldn't remember. That evening, they had dinner together at the kitchen table. William had ordered Chinese takeout, their usual Friday night ritual, though he didn't mention that to Kate. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that comes when two people are learning to be at ease with each other rather than the intimate quiet of long familiarity. "William," Kate said as they finished eating, "can I ask you something personal?" He nodded, bracing himself for whatever question she might have. "Are you grieving for me? I mean, for the person I was before?" The question caught him off guard with its directness. He had been trying so hard to be positive and hopeful that he hadn't allowed himself to acknowledge the depth of his loss. But Kate's frank way of speaking seemed to invite honesty. "Yes," he admitted, "I am. I loved that woman more than anything in the world, and losing her, it feels like a death, even though you're here with me. I know that's probably difficult to hear." Kate nodded thoughtfully. "It's not difficult. It's honest. And I think I needed to hear it. I've been feeling guilty, like I'm somehow failing by not being able to remember our life together. But if you can acknowledge that the person you married is gone, then maybe I can stop feeling responsible for bringing her back." Her words were both painful and liberating. William realized that they had both been carrying impossible expectations. He had been hoping for a miracle recovery, and she had been feeling guilty for not providing one. "So, where does that leave us?" William asked. Kate considered this carefully. "I don't know, but I'd like to find out if you're willing. I may not remember loving you, but I can see that you're a good man. You're patient and kind, and you've been taking care of me without asking for anything in return. That means something to me." Over the following weeks, they began to establish a new rhythm. Kate spent her mornings working with a therapist who came to the house, doing exercises designed to improve cognitive function and, hopefully, recover some memories. The afternoons she spent in the garden, which seemed to bring her more peace than anything else. William adjusted his work schedule so he could be home more, but he tried to give Kate space to explore her interests and personality without the weight of their shared history. Slowly, William began to see who Kate was becoming, or perhaps who she had always been beneath the layers of shared experiences and memories. She was more direct than before, less inclined to avoid difficult conversations. She approached problems with a logical methodology that was both familiar and different. She still loved mystery novels, but now she read them analytically, making notes about clues and red herrings. She still enjoyed cooking, but she experimented with flavors and techniques rather than relying on tried and true recipes. Most importantly, she seemed to be developing feelings for William that were entirely separate from their previous relationship. It wasn't the deep, tested love of marriage, but it was something genuine and growing. She would smile when he came home from work, ask about his day with real interest, and sometimes touch his arm when she wanted to make a point. These gestures weren't echoes of old habits, but new expressions of affection. One evening, as they worked together in the garden, William following Kate's surprisingly confident directions about plant placement, she paused in her weeding to look at him seriously. "I need to tell you something," she said, her hands still buried in the soil. "I don't think my memories are coming back. It's been almost 2 months, and if anything, I feel more settled in this life, this identity, rather than reaching back toward the old one." William's heart sank, even though he had begun to suspect the same thing. "How do you feel about that?" Relieved, actually, Kate admitted. "I think I've been afraid that if I remembered our old life, I'd lose this new person I'm becoming. And I like who I am now. I like the way I think, the way I see the world. I don't want to disappear just to bring back someone else, even if that someone else was your wife." William sat back on his heels, processing her words. "So what are you saying?" Kate pulled her hands from the soil and wiped them on her jeans, a gesture so familiar that it took his breath away, even though it came from this new version of her. "I'm saying that I want to keep building this life with you, if you want that too. Not as your wife trying to remember our marriage, but as Kate, whoever she is now, falling in love with William for the first time." The offer was both everything William had hoped for and completely different from what he had expected. It meant letting go of their past while embracing an uncertain future. It meant mourning his first love while opening his heart to a second one. "Are you sure?" he asked. "This won't be easy. We'll be starting over completely." Kate smiled, not the polite expression she had worn in the hospital, but something warm and genuine and entirely her own. "I've never been more sure of anything. Well, at least not since I can remember." As they knelt there in the garden they were learning to tend together, William felt something shift inside him. The grief for his lost wife would always be there, but alongside it was growing something new. Love for this woman who shared Kate's face, but possessed her own spirit, her own hopes, her own way of seeing the world. It wasn't the love story he had planned, but it was the one they were writing together, day by day, season by season, in the good soil of their shared commitment to growth and change. 6 months had passed since Kate came home from the hospital, and the house had slowly transformed from shrine to their old life into something entirely new. The guest room where Kate had initially slept was now her art studio. She had discovered a passion for watercolor painting that surprised them both. The walls were covered with her landscapes and garden studies, each one showing a unique perspective that William found both beautiful and revelatory. Their relationship had evolved into something that defied easy categorization. They weren't the married couple they had once been, but they were far more than roommates or friends. They had developed their own rituals and inside jokes, their own ways of communicating and connecting. Kate had kept the name, but made it entirely her own, and William had learned to love this new person while honoring the memory of who she used to be. The morning that would change everything started like any other. Kate was in the garden, harvesting tomatoes for lunch, while William worked in his home office. He had taken on more freelance writing projects to have flexibility in his schedule, and was deep in an article about urban planning when he heard Kate calling his name with unusual urgency. "William, William, come quickly." The tone of her voice sent him running. He found Kate standing frozen beside the tomato plants, her hands shaking as she stared at something in the soil. For a terrifying moment, he thought she might be having some kind of medical episode. "What is it?" Are you okay? Kate pointed down at what she had uncovered while weeding. It was a small metal box, rusty and dirt-stained, partially buried beneath the tomato plants. I found this, and when I touched it, she paused, her voice filled with wonder and confusion. William, I remember burying this. Not clearly, not completely, but I remember being here in this spot, digging in the rain. William's heart began racing. They had never mentioned the time capsule to her. It had seemed too painful, too much like forcing memories that might never return. But here she was having found it on her own, and something in her mind was responding to it. Do you want to open it? He asked carefully, not sure whether this development was cause for hope or concern. Kate nodded, still staring at the box, as if it might disappear. They took it inside and carefully cleaned off the dirt in the kitchen sink. William's hands trembled as he opened the simple latch. They had buried the box on their first wedding anniversary, filling it with mementos and letters to their future selves, planning to open it on their 10th anniversary. Inside were the items William remembered: a photo from their wedding day, a pressed flower from Kate's bouquet, ticket stubs from their first movie date, and 2 sealed envelopes containing letters they had written to themselves. But it was Kate's reaction that took his breath away. She picked up the pressed flower with trembling fingers, and tears began streaming down her face. I remember, she whispered. I remember being so worried about whether it would keep its color, whether it would still be beautiful years later. She looked up at William with eyes that were suddenly alive with recognition. I remember you laughing and saying that beauty changes but doesn't disappear, it just becomes different. William felt his own eyes filling with tears. You remember that? I remember writing my letter, Kate continued, her voice growing stronger. I remember being so happy, so excited about our future. I remember, she paused, pressing the flower to her chest. I remember loving you. Not everything, not clearly, but I remember the feeling. It was like sunshine inside my chest, warm and bright and safe. The next few hours were a whirlwind of partial memories surfacing. Kate remembered their first apartment with the leaky faucet and the neighbors who played music too loud. She remembered their first Christmas together, how they had gotten lost trying to find the perfect tree and ended up with a scraggly pine from a gas station lot. She remembered the morning they found out they had gotten the house, how they had danced in the empty kitchen while the realtor watched with amusement. But the memories weren't complete or linear. They came in flashes and fragments, emotions and sensations more than clear narrative. Kate would suddenly smell something or touch something and gasp with recognition, but when she tried to hold on to the memory, it would slip away like water through her fingers. It's like trying to catch butterflies, she explained to William as they sat together on the porch that evening, watching the sunset. I can see them, these beautiful moments, but when I reach for them, they flutter away. William held her hand, marveling at how familiar this gesture felt, even though it was the first time she had initiated physical affection since the accident. How does it feel? Are you okay? Kate was quiet for a long moment, considering. It's strange. The person I've become over these past months feels real and solid and mine. But these memories, they feel like someone else's life. I can remember loving you, but it doesn't feel like the way I love you now. It's different. Both are real, but they're separate somehow. I think that makes sense, William said, though he wasn't entirely sure he understood. You've been through something traumatic. Your brain has been healing in its own way. Maybe the love you felt then and the love you feel now are both part of who you are, but they don't have to be the same thing. That night, Kate asked if she could read her letter from the time capsule privately. William gave her space, busying himself with dishes and household tasks while she sat in the living room with the envelope. When she emerged an hour later, her eyes were red from crying, but her expression was peaceful. What did you write to yourself? William asked gently. Hopes, Kate replied simply. So many hopes about who we would become, what our life would look like. Some of them came true, others, well, life took us in a different direction than we expected. She handed him his own letter, still sealed. Do you want to read yours? William took the envelope, but didn't open it immediately. What did you think about our hopes? Do you feel like we failed somehow? Kate smiled, and in that smile, William could see both versions of her, the woman he had married and the woman she had become. No, I don't think we failed. I think we had one story, and then life gave us a different one. The first story was beautiful, and this one is beautiful too, just in a different way. William opened his letter and read the words his younger self had written. He had been so confident then, so certain about the path their life would take. He had written about growing old together, about children and grandchildren, about becoming one of those couples who finish each other's sentences and move in perfect synchronization. I was so sure I knew how love worked, he told Kate, showing her the letter. I thought it was about becoming so close that you couldn't tell where one person ended and the other began. But what we have now, it's different. It's about choosing to build something together while still being separate, complete people. Kate nodded. I love you, William. This new me loves this current you. It's not the same as what we had before, but it's not less than what we had before either. It's just ours. That night, for the first time since the accident, Kate moved back into their bedroom. Not because she remembered their old life, but because she wanted to start building a new one. They lay in the darkness talking about their future, tentative plans, and shared dreams that belonged entirely to who they were now. In the months that followed, more memories surfaced occasionally, usually triggered by sensory experiences or emotional moments. Kate would suddenly remember a conversation or a shared experience, but these recovered memories felt more like stories from a book she had once read rather than her own lived experiences. She came to understand that she was living with two versions of herself, the one who had loved William before the accident and the one who was learning to love him again. The breakthrough came on a morning in late spring when William woke to find Kate already up, sitting by the window with her sketchbook. She was drawing their garden from memory, but not as it looked now, as it had looked the day they planted it together 2 years ago. I remember planning this, she said when she noticed he was awake. Not just planting it, but the whole vision of what it would become. I remember you saying that gardens are about faith in the future, believing that what you plant today will grow into something beautiful tomorrow. William joined her at the window, looking out at the garden that was now lush and mature, exactly as Kate had envisioned it. Do you remember what you said when I said that? Kate smiled, her eyes distant with memory. I said that love was like gardening too, that you have to tend it and trust it and believe in growth even when you can't see it happening. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Kate's original words about love had proven prophetic in ways they never could have imagined. Their love had indeed grown through tending and patience, even after everything they thought they knew about it had been uprooted. I want to plant something new, Kate said, still looking out at the garden. Something that belongs to us now, not to who we used to be. That afternoon, they planted a new section of the garden together. Kate chose sunflowers, tall, bright, resilient flowers that would grow through the summer and into fall. As they worked side by side in the soil, William realized that this was perhaps what love really meant. Not just holding on to what you have, but being willing to plant something new even when the future is uncertain. Watching Kate's hands in the soil, confident and sure as she placed each seed with care, William understood that they had not lost their love story to tragedy. They had simply learned that love stories can have multiple chapters, and sometimes the most beautiful ones are the ones you never expected to write.